China didn't just make a move, it rewrote the global script. While Trump was raising tariffs, Beijing was signing the largest trade pact in history, representing $25 trillion in GDP and over 2 billion people, all without the United States at the table. Gulf nations are moving away from the dollar. Southeast Asia now runs on Chinese-built systems. The West, quietly being pushed to the sidelines? This isn't just BRICS, it's faster, larger, and already operational. If you still think America controls the global trade order, you missed what just happened in Kuala Lumpur. China didn't just show up to the Kuala Lumpur summit, it led it, forging a $25 trillion coalition that links ASEAN, Gulf states, and its vast manufacturing belt. Meanwhile, the United States was busy escalating tariffs by 50%. This new alliance now represents 2.15 billion people, and a combined GDP nearly matching the United States and European Union, yet it received almost no major coverage in Western media. Bloomberg reports that ASEAN's intra-regional trade rose by 9.4% year-over-year in early 2025, while exports to the Gulf jumped 13%, showing a clear shift in momentum. Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim called it a platform of unity, not rivalry. But according to former Malaysian Ambassador Muhammad Nasri, this wasn't just symbolic. He said, China is filling the void left by Western tariff threats, not with tension but with coordination. So, if the economic map has been redrawn, why isn't anyone in the West paying attention? IMF data cited by the Wall Street Journal shows that China, ASEAN, and the Gulf bloc now generate over 55% of global GDP growth, officially making them the planet's largest economic engine. Trade between China and ASEAN surpassed $982 billion in 2024. Gulf-ASEAN trade hit $63 billion, a 60% surge compared to pre-pandemic levels. Vietnam saw its steel exports to the United States collapse by 27% following Trump's tariff escalation. Yet Chinese imports actually rose by 14%. This pivot is spreading fast. In Indonesia, American tariffs wiped out 5 years of trade gains in just 1 quarter. Meanwhile, China's upgraded ACFTA 3.0 deal now includes digital commerce, ESG standards, and green energy investment, fields where U.S. efforts remain, well, slow or maybe even reactive. James Chin of the University of Tasmania put it bluntly, China now operates where the U.S. doesn't even show up. And if these trade corridors become permanent, what happens next? When the ASEAN Express freight line from Malaysia to Chongqing launched in late 2024, it didn't just cut logistics costs by 17%, it actually reshaped who owns Southeast Asia's industrial backbone. Take the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed rail, partially funded by China for $7.3 billion, already moving over 9 million passengers, according to Indonesia's transport ministry. These aren't just one-off projects. They're really long-term anchors. By physically embedding itself in ASEAN's infrastructure and supply chains, China is transforming partnerships into structural dependencies. And it's not just outbound influence. Chinese firms are now offshoring manufacturing to cheaper ASEAN hubs, building joint production zones that help evade U.S. sanctions. The Wall Street Journal reports Chinese green tech exports to ASEAN rose 19% over the last 6 months, thanks to these cross-border factory setups. But perhaps the most powerful shift is happening beneath the radar. Undersea cables, AI clusters, and 5G networks, all being routed east. So what exactly is the U.S. building in response? Other than resentment? Pause for a moment. Because what happened in the Gulf used to be unthinkable. Saudi Arabia now executes about 30% of its oil sales in currencies other than the dollar, according to Bloomberg Energy. And the Gulf Cooperation Council just committed to boosting trade with ASEAN from $130 billion in 2023 to $180 billion by 2032, under a new charter driven by Crown Prince Sheikh Sabah Khaled. At the same time, Chinese Premier Li Qiang confirmed China would align its economic strategy with both Gulf and ASEAN priorities, moving away from bilateral deals towards unified ecosystems. And it doesn't stop there. Total Energies, one of Europe's largest energy firms, signed a yuan-based LNG contract with China, breaking the US dollar's decades-long grip on global oil pricing. While US analysts debate whether the Gulf is shifting, China's already there, making deals. The Financial Times reports that Gulf sovereign wealth funds are pouring capital into artificial intelligence, clean energy, and digital finance, the very sectors where American investments have stalled or pulled back. So now the question is simple. If China controls both the trade routes and the energy pipelines, what leverage is left for Washington? The United States has not signed a single binding trade deal under Trump's second term. The so-called Phase 1 agreement with China? Well, it was never ratified by Congress, and China missed its agricultural purchase goals by over 28%, with zero enforcement repercussions. According to the Peterson Institute, United States tariffs have cost the economy over $300 billion since 2018, all without triggering a meaningful return of large-scale domestic manufacturing. In contrast, China is driving forward formalized multi-sector agreements, RCEP, ACFTA 3.0, and an upcoming China-GCC free trade agreement expected by mid-2026. Even Canada and Mexico, once pillars of U.S. regional trade, are now shifting toward Asia, with Canada's foreign direct investment in the region growing 11% in 2024 per IMF data. While Washington governs by executive order, Beijing is constructing permanent economic infrastructure. So ask yourself, who's really decoupling and who's just being phased out? As of 2025, Chinese tech firms are not just exporting products. They're building digital control zones. Huawei runs critical 5G infrastructure in Thailand, and joint AI labs in Singapore and Malaysia are backed by China's powerful National Development and Reform Commission. Bloomberg reports that China's digital investment in ASEAN grew by 28% in 2024, with a focus on cloud platforms, AI, and fiber optics. These aren't short-term projects. Many involve 10 to 15-year tech leases, and some are actually linked to sovereign data access deals. After U.S. chip bans, Chinese AI companies shifted their compute bases to Southeast Asia, leading to a 36% rise in Chinese-backed data center development, according to CBRE. These facilities don't just work around U.S. restrictions, they embed China deep inside ASEAN's digital backbone. So, when the region brings its next logistics platform or smart energy grid online, will it even require Western integration? In March 2025, China and Total Energies completed a liquefied natural gas trade in yuan, completely bypassing the dollar. It wasn't symbolic. That transaction set the foundation for what Bloomberg predicts could be 20% of global energy deals being settled outside the dollar by 2028. Saudi Arabia has already moved 30% of its oil trades away from the dollar, and the UAE now clears yuan transactions using China's CIS system, shielding deals from swift monitoring. Meanwhile, China's Belt and Road-linked energy routes, including digital payment systems in Indonesia and AI-powered pipelines in Kazakhstan, are merging energy with fintech in ways the old petrodollar system never envisioned. According to HSBC Global Research, yuan usage in trade settlements has jumped from 2.5% in 2020 to 5.8% in early 2025, more than doubling in 5 years. But this shift isn't just about currency, it's about who controls the flow. The Kuala Lumpur summit didn't conclude with military alliances, it ended with a framework. ASEAN, the Gulf, and China agreed to fast-track a China-GCC free trade agreement and upgrade ACFTA to 3.0, incorporating AI standards and ESG metrics. Analyst Anari Brahm notes this alliance now commands nearly $25 trillion in GDP, almost on par with the United States and the European Union. More importantly, it's setting legal precedents. Plans are already underway for a GCC-funded maritime corridor in East Malaysia, bypassing both the Strait of Hormuz and U.S.-controlled Pacific choke points. Professor James Chin described it as a model for post-Western cooperation, where legal compatibility replaces security guarantees. Former diplomat Mohammad Nasri added, and I quote, "China is filling the global rules gap with contracts, not conferences. If ASEAN, the Gulf, and China can standardize tech governance, trade law, and investment arbitration, who really needs WTO-style systems to resolve disputes?" Vision 2045, ASEAN's strategic blueprint, lays out goals for digital integration, legal alignment, and joint industry zones. But turning that into reality is the hard part. McKinsey reports intra-ASEAN trade remains at just 23%, far below the EU's 65%, mainly due to customs differences and disjointed digital systems. Gulf sovereign funds have pledged over $50 billion in new investments, but execution hurdles, like land delays in Vietnam and AI policy gaps in Brunei, could slow momentum. Yes, China can finance, but governance across the bloc is uneven, and geopolitical tensions are mounting. A leaked EU Council report obtained by Reuters warns that the China-ASEAN GCC axis could push Europe toward digital decoupling if legal paths diverge too far. The vision is bold, but the gap between plans and reality is where this entire alliance will either solidify or splinter. The real threat isn't BRICS, it's this. If you think BRICS is the biggest challenge to the Western world order, you're missing what's unfolding right now. This isn't just another economic bloc. It's a parallel global infrastructure, digitally built, Gulf-funded, and running on Chinese systems. And here's the truth few are saying aloud. If this alliance works, it won't just weaken US influence. It may rewrite what the global economy even is. So what do you think? Is this the real deal or just another summit mirage? Drop your take in the comments below.